Welcome back, webheads, to the next episode of Spidey Swing-Bys. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, on a very rainy day, I might say, on my end. So if that's in the background, I apologize, but it does kind of soothe me to hear all that. So here we are on our first official appearance and team up for Spider-Man outside of his own comic in Strange Tales Annual 2. We have, my friend, 72 big pages, most of which are reprints. But you know what? There's a Spider-Man story. There's a Human Torch story here. For those of you unaware, if you haven't been following along, the Strange Tales part of things. For a time, Johnny Storm, and eventually the Thing for a little bit, when the two of them would kind of co-host this together, would and a little bit of the Invisible Girl, because she's not the Invisible Woman yet, came to this point, and he was very popular among young readers at the time. So, with the Fantastic Four, so decided, hey, let's give Johnny his own comic, and it's not the best. If you've been following along with Spidey Swing-Bys, you know I'm not, well, let's say, the most positive about all the Strange Tale stories. They're not terrible stories by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not really good either for the most part. Will this break the curse? This team up between my favorite character of all time and one of probably my well, I know with the four, it's kind of hard to tell because the Thing is definitely number one. I'll put Johnny. Man, I don't really know where I place everyone. Besides, I know Thing is number one. So forget about that for a second. Will this break the curse? Who knows? That's the fun. So we're going to get into this story here. But first, we do have to establish where we are. And since I've already gone over the other comics that have released at this point in time in Amazing Spider-Man number 4 for Spidey Swing-Bys, we're going to be doing just a little bit of the nuts and bolts, not everything this year. So nothing about what the rest of the Marvel's doing this month. So this was released in week 24, 1963. The actual release date is June 11th, 1963. The story is called On the Trail of the Amazing Spider-Man. This is written by Stan Lee, penciled by Jack Kirby, which I believe this is the first time he actually officially got to draw Spider-Man. So that's exciting. And you can definitely tell it's not Ditko at work here. Outside of some of the inking you done, which the inking is done by Steve Ditko, it is colored by Stan Goldberg, lettered by Artie Simek, edited by Stan Lee. Now, this story. We start with Johnny and Sue at their house in Glenville, not Glenview, like I keep wanting to say in my head. Now, this is part of what Strange Tales did. It had this ridiculous premise where the very public faces of the Fantastic Four, who had no secret identities at the time, by the way, both went to um, this town so that they could be on their own, have their own kind of identities outside of the Fantastic Four. So here we go. It's at this point in time we see Sue and Johnny just kind of hanging out and using an obstacle course, a daily workout, we're told, this backyard obstacle course, where he goes through some rings, flies through a World War a tank, and uh, Sue tries to use some kind of hose or something to try and take him down, and he even uses his own finger to create a little fire to go in between the lock of something, which is certainly a way Johnny's power is used. We'll see there's a lot of creative liberties used, even with the fact that this is early Marvel. We're still establishing what people can do. Like we have the Submariner who can have this any ability a fish can have kind of thing that definitely gets thrown away later on, or at that point in time. So Johnny and Sue are just kind of hanging out as he is reading live. And as he's doing so, he finds out that people are talking about Spider-Man more than him, which if you're Johnny has always been that kind of person. He loves the spotlight. He loves publicity. He loves people looking at him and seeing that he's a great guy. And if you look there, swell-headed, by the way, means and there's a lot of 60s lingo in here. I mean, obviously it's written in that time, but I had to like research a ton of this as I was reading through it. It's like, what is going on here? Swell-headed just means that, he thinks Spider-Man, in Johnny's opinion, just thinks too highly of himself, and that's why this is happening right now, all that mess. So there we go. He is upset because more people care about Spider-Man than him. So what is Johnny Storm to do? Well, he's got to find a way to, you know, take down Spider-Man, show him that, he's nothing in the grand scheme of things. And Sue's just like, "Yeah, I've had enough of your mess. I'm done." So she just goes invisible and leaves. And I believe that's it for her in the story. Which, to be fair, if you had a bratty younger brother like Johnny, I get it. Like Sue's dealt with enough in her life. Like there's plenty she just needs to get away from. So we then go over from there to a local museum of art where we find the magnificent Fox, that unforgettable villain who has appeared twice in all of Marvel history. The second time being in the 90s in Spider-Man Unlimited 5, I think, where he tries to go after the Torch and Spider-Man again for what they do to him here. So that's that. And they're gonna try and get this painting out by the morning. They have this magnificent scheme where they pretend to be repairmen, have the police kind of and the security kind of guarding it go away, and in the process, they end up stealing the painting, which for a criminal scheme, not the worst I've ever seen in Marvel Comics. I mean, I'll give it to them. But as that goes on, Spider-Man has kind of realized, oh, they're framing me for it because we find in the midst of all of this that the Fox is webbing behind, making it appear as if Spider-Man did it. And I cannot remember if at this time it's been established that his webs only last for an hour after this, or maybe it was just that soon after it was caught. So we'll see how time goes on here. But Spider-Man's just like, hey, like the only way I can prove my innocence is to find the real thief, and I could use some help on this. You know, uh, I had something I was going to say. I'm sorry. Um, Even though the last time this happened with the chameleon, it's like, nope, I'll just do this on my own. Of course, we need a team up established. We have an excuse for this plot. He's going to go to Glenview. Excuse me, God dang it, Glenville. And he's going to go find the Human Torch. How does he do so? Since it's outside of New York City, well, he can't web sling across the skyscrapers scrapers that don't exist. So he goes and grabs a train to get to Long Island. So gets there, finds the house, which I had forgotten at this point in time. It is established way early in Strange Tales. Like I mentioned earlier, like at the very beginning, Sue and Johnny pretend not to be members of the Fantastic Four. They kind of try to have their secret identities, and this was just found to be so ridiculous because it is such ridiculous. It just gets to the point where it's just told that the people of Glenville was like, "Hey, we know who you are, but we were trying to respect your privacy." So that's why I make fun of the fact that there's a giant four there. If they were still trying to keep their secret identity, thank God this is several issues after that. They failed miserably. So we do see Sue again. She leaves a little bit early, and Johnny is by himself, and he gets a call from the police chief about Spider-Man and how he's going to be the one to grab him. But he notices a shadow outside of Payne there, and he's going to try and find Spider-Man. Been very clever for Johnny, by the way. Doesn't actually confront him through the window that he saw. He actually moves around the house, and Spider-Man is like, "Hey, I'm gonna talk to you," but Johnny being Johnny, hot-blooded, hot-headed, attacks him immediately, and they end up in this brawl. So Spider-Man goes into the pool that the Torch and Susan have here, and to escape the flames. But Johnny is going to try and heat the water up to the point where Spider-Man's forced to get out. But Spidey, being the smarter of the two, creates some webbing here to try and get the Torch kind of doused, but it gets out of the way just in time as Johnny uses this is a very creative use of his powers too. And I can't remember if he's done this in Fantastic Four or not. I really should have been reading those too, outside of the ones that have been appearing in the same months as the Spider-Man that I've been kind of reading. But like I said, creative use of his powers, tries to get away, but Spidey runs away, ends up at this construction site and attempts to use the cement to take down uh, Johnny, and actually succeeds in putting it on top of him. But even though Johnny has been underestimated here, I've skipped ahead. Sorry about that. He has decided that he's going to find his way out of this and manages to burst through with his flame, but it's just a lot, so he has to rest. And as he's worried, as he's made up the fake ability of spider vision that Spider-Man has, not knowing that he himself is being kind of stalked by Spider-Man, who has gotten away and now has gone into the conveniently empty Carson Chemical Laboratories, where he has devised a way through showcasing Peter's smarts, and this is very useful to someone who maybe hasn't read Spider-Man yet. So, oh, well, he's a science genius, and is it implausible? Not implausible, a little improbable that he's able to do all this. It's okay. So what Peter does here is he makes some cold silicone crystals, which he manipulates under the microscope into just what's he need, and that's when we get to this panel here, where he's going to use this specialized webbing to take down the torch's flame and enable him to take him down. Which great for Peter. I mean, it showcases his brilliance here in such a short amount of time, and he challenges Johnny directly with a spider signal and gets to the point where the two of them, they're just having blows that the communication is over with. We have to have our fully recognized Marvel trademarked "let's you and him fight" moment trope here. So instead of being reasonable to one another, they just go into this brawl. Spider-Man leads them away and just start making fun of the Torch. How someone as slow as him can manage to keep up with the Fantastic Four, just to like screw with Johnny a little bit. And it gets to the point where Johnny is allowing his hot-headedness, to which Spider-Man fully takes advantage of here to great effect, to encapsulate him in a web, and which eventually starts dousing the flames of the Human Torch and causing him to lose his flame, not completely, but to the point where he's starting to freeze over. But Spider-Man does take advantage of the situation, actually talk to Johnny and be, hey, like, look, I thought we could work together. I need your help about this. I probably made a mistake coming to talk to you in the first place, because he thinks that all the Torch cares about is headlines. And, oh, what was Torch saying earlier about Spider-Man? All he cares about is headlines. Oh no, we've established our mutual, we didn't really understand each other moment here. And we're making assumptions about the other person. And Johnny, to his credit, realizes this and goes off to tell the police and say, hey, um, it's not who we thought it was. It's not Spider-Man. He had me at his mercy. He could have killed me at any time, but instead he chose to talk to me. And here we are. So he meets with Deputy Police Inspector Rudd, which, yeah, how many appearances does this guy have? I didn't even bother to look that up. But Torch gives him a light for his cigarette because this is still the 60s and everyone still smokes. So what do? They spend a grand total of long minutes of painstaking scrutiny to find the actual person behind this, the fox, known as Reynard Slinker. And Reynard actually is kind of a clever name, if I remember correctly, in English folklore. There's kind of a thief, a fox like, or even a fox himself. I can't remember off the top of my head, known as Reynard. Was it from Canterbury Tales? I would have to look that up again. It's been way too long. And I forgot to look this up beforehand, of someone who had a very fox-like quality called Reynard. So shout out to them. That's a very cool shout out. I mean, reference they're making without bringing too much attention to it. Now, so Johnny, realizing who this is, has recognized his mistake once more and writes in the air, Spider-Man, let's work together. And the fox and his henchmen have known this. And as the fox says, a wise general knows when to retreat. Don't panic, boys. We'll simply leave town for a while for our health. Because if there's anything you want to establish for your villain, you want them to be very cowardly and to not want to confront your hero at all. Which, whatever, that's fine. So, what does Spider-Man do in response to this? We get, for the first time in Spider-Man history, the Human Torch and Spider-Man meeting on top of the Statue of Liberty, which is a huge part of their development, as part of their friendship. Say, hey, if we ever want to talk to one another, hey, let's meet at the usual spot or at the usual place, or however the heck it's worded. And that is the Statue of Liberty. It's a great place. They both can access it easily. Spider-Man through his webs, Torch through his flying. It's a great open space where they can just talk with one another. And I really love it. It's just a simple thing. It's a goofy Marvel thing, but it makes sense in context. And it's a good way for the both of them to just, hey, hang out. And even though they recognized they need to work together, they can't do so effectively. So the two of them kind of just have a bit of butting heads for a little bit, but they still agree to work together to find the fox, who they're going to the subway because Spider-Man has been able to. We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that in a second. It's weird. It's wacky. It's wild. It's not really fitting, but it's whatever. So on the way down the subway, and some more uh, early Marvel ridiculousness. Spider-Man encounters this old lady who maybe she reminds him of Aunt May, and he just can't help himself. He's got to help her with her package. She just needs to so she gives some subway tokens, and instead of a spider sense going off here, as it will later on in this book, he nothing happens because oh no, he's covered in some sort of super glue, which is so stupid. But I love it. I love it so much. It's so stupid. It's how does the fox outwit Spider-Man? Somehow circumventing his spider sense. He dresses up as an old woman, has him hold this item full of super glue so he can shoot him, but the torch arrives just in time, blasts the gun out of his hands with fire, somehow not charring the man's hands in the process, but whatever. We'll just move on with our lives. So, dressed in drag, the fox is forced to flee, and the torch is able to eventually warm the glue off of Spider-Man's hands, and the two of them then head to the train tracks below to locate the fox. But Peter has noticed something weird through his spider sense. Hmm. How does that work? Ho is this a power Peter has always had, or is this well, we need to find a way for them to find a villain, so, I don't know, his spider sense can just track down problems or something like that, and it is, used and abused multiple times over in this story. Somehow, Peter's spider sense is able to allow them both to track down the fox. This would be an incredibly useful ability for Peter to use over the years. I can't remember the last time something like this is ever used. I don't know if this gets retconned out of existence as something that never happened or was like a one-time thing. Uh, there are some kooky things we're going to see in Amazing Spider-Man 5. If I remember correctly, Doom, spoilers, using a special radio frequency, and I think Doctor Octopus does this too early on in Spider-Man, to mess with. Oh, the Chameleon did it too, didn't he? In Spider-Man 1, I think that was it. Yeah. Um, it, like I said, it's weird, it's wacky, it's Marvel. It doesn't make sense if you hold it up to any amount of scrutiny. As far as Spider-Man's abilities, how they're supposed to work, but they're still figuring him out. So I'm going to extend a little grace to Stan and Steve and Jack right now. So they go to the Bowery, which of course is the crummiest part of town. Is this true of New York now? I don't know. I've only been to like Manhattan. So there's that. And the Human Torch is like, hey, what's this about your spider sense? That's an actual thing you can do. And indeed it is, as I skipped ahead there. Sorry about that image. And the two of them and some very racially insensitive uh let's see, looking around, there's a wooden, as the word they would use is Indian, which is a very popular item around the town, around the United States at that point in time. So this is a cultural thing around the time, something we frown upon in the future, being like, oh, we probably shouldn't have those representations as that idea. So there's that thing. But Spider-Man is able to notice that underneath the statue, there is a hidden door with his spider sense, which okay, sure. Maybe he just detected that there was a gunman below and a spider sense went off, and that's what it was actually talking about. Who knows? Because so he gets shot at. They manage to take down the Fox's cronies, who are very upset with everything that they have been betrayed by him. So they betray him in return and say, "Hey, he's going to Central Park. Go and track him down." So that's exactly what our heroes do. They go to Central Park. They find that there's another layer of the fox, but it's been deserted. And Johnny makes fun of Peter's spider sense. But in the process, they end up back on top in Central Park and they find this policeman talking to this strange old man with a big nose who is hauling around a telescope, which has a sign on it that says, "See the moon and planets for 10 cents." Now, this is the middle of the day, and that's something that is actually used to the advantage of our heroes. Like, look, like I said it before, Johnny's not the brightest matchstick in the box, but he's not an idiot either. So he knows, hey, you shouldn't be able to like see with things with a dinky little telescope like that during the day. So they realize, oh, that's probably the fox in disguise. So what does the fox do to try and outwit his foes? He uses, of course, his magnificent roller skates to get away from these heroes who can easily move faster than him. Spider-Man takes him down, grabs him, and takes his mask off, revealing the Fox's face. Because as we've realized, nobody's ever out tricked the Fox before, except for now, and one more time later on, and then never again, because no other writer has deemed fit to bring the Fox back into Marvel continuity. And we get to this point where the torch has found the plans, has allowed his hand to prevent it from burning up. Excuse me, the not the plans. Sorry, that's a different story. Found the painting, find it, and the two of them just have some lighthearted banter. You were some help, Torch. I needed you like a hole in the head. In your case, kiddo, a hole in the head would be an improvement. And the fox is having none of it, just asking them to lock him up. This is, your ha ha ending. We're pals now, kind of thing. It's that's the end of the story. Now, what did I think about this story? Without giving it away, as I might have earlier, I do actually like this story. I know what I'm dealing with at this time in Marvel. It'd be handled a lot more differently now if someone was writing, but guess what? I don't need that right now. I have that pure 60s goofiness of let's you and him fight. Let's go to this weird town that's close to New York, so I have to get on the train to get there. Spider-Man's confused by an old guy dressed up as an old lady who gets him to touch this thing that has super glue on it. Why doesn't it affect him, but it affects Spider-Man? Doesn't worry about it. Why doesn't Spider-Man's spider sense work like it should? Don't worry about it. But here we are nonetheless. So it gets to this point in a story. Is this a good story? The answer is uh, kind of. Ultimately, I give this a 7.5 out of 10. I thought about going a little lower, just a 7, but there is some charm to this story. And this is their first ever like official team up. They met before in Amazing Spider-Man 1. They fought briefly a little bit there, but like they didn't really get too much time together in that point. So we have the vitriolic best buds trope is kind of one of the most fitting examples of that kind of friendship in comics between the two of them. Peter and Johnny are always going to butt heads. It doesn't matter if they're on the same side. It doesn't matter if they're on opposing sides. It doesn't matter if nothing bad has been going on. They're going to find a way to just mess with one another. And it's led to some very classic scenarios. You got the bombastic Bagman and stuff like that. We got like asbestos webbing that Spider-Man has used on the torch as time has gone on. The two of them just messing with one another. It's a lot of fun. I really love their friendship, and this is where it starts. Without this goofy mess of a comic, we don't get to where we are with Peter and Johnny, and as they eventually do find out each other's secret. Well, Peter's secret identity. Now that Johnny is gone past the idea of having a secret identity, and it just works. It it just works. So that's why I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Like I could have gone lower, but at the end of the day, it served its purpose. I had fun. This is a kind of just comics in its infancy as far as superheroes are concerned from the Marvel side of things. It works perfectly fine. So that's that. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below your opinions on this. Was my grade too harsh? Was it wasn't harsh enough? Is there something I didn't focus on you would have liked me to have? Do you have a different feelings on how this friendship is established here between the two of them? Is there something that should have been added here? Do you have issues with the art? Like, I may notice some discrepancies every now and then, but I'm not really an art guy, so I don't really see them that often. So I'm always willing to have something pointed out to me. Is there a reference I didn't bring up? Or did I get something wrong? Like, hey, let me know. I am all for constructive criticism. I'm all for having fun on this. So there's that. So next week, when I do get to this, we will be on Amazing Spider-Man Number 5, that, of course, being the first time Spider-Man fights Doctor Doom in another ridiculous, wacky 60 story that I really enjoy. You have a great moment with Flash Thompson in there for Spider-Man and Doctor Doom as he. Uh, yeah, I'm not going to spoil it. It's been too much. I even know it's over 60 years old, but it is what it is. So, guys, once again, just leave a like, subscribe down below. We really appreciate everything you do. Share this video as much as possible. So until next time, webheads, see ya.